Hey there, my name is Gary Sims from Android Authority. Now, Huawei have been on a great run recently. We had the Nexus 6P, then the Huawei Mate 8, and now it has launched its latest flagship device, the Huawei P9. Now, the interesting thing about the P9, it has a camera setup that carries the Leica branding. Now, really the question is this the best phone that Huawei have made to date? Well, let's find out. Now, personally, I like the design of the P9. Ever since I opened the box and saw it, I've really been enamored by the design of this phone. It's got an all-metal unibody design. It's only 6.9mm thick. You've got a full HD 5.2-inch display. You've got lovely chamfered edges. You've got this great metal finish at the back. And of course, you've got this Leica camera setup here towards the top. Now, the design language here is very similar to that of the Huawei P8, and quite rightly so, because the P8 was also a good looking device. Just with the P9, everything has been refined just that little bit more. So looking around the phone, at the front we have the 5.2-inch Full HD display along with the Huawei logo. There's no physical home button as all the navigation keys are on screen. On the right hand side we'll find the power button, which is now textured. That's a minor change from the Huawei P8, and the volume rocker. On the left hand side is the SIM tray. Now, my review model is the single SIM model, and there is a space also on the tray for SD card support. At the top of the phone you'll find just a single hole for the microphone, whereas at the bottom things are quite busy. You have the microphone port hole as well, you have the headphone jack, you have the speaker grill, and you have the USB Type-C charging port. Flipping the phone onto the back, you have this area in black where the Leica dual camera is held along with its LED flash, and then just below that you have the fingerprint reader. So let's look at the display. The Huawei P9 comes with a Full HD 5.2-inch IPS display and has 2.5D glass. According to the specs, the display is capable of 500 nits of brightness and has a 96% color saturation. That 1920 by 1080 resolution yields a very decent 423 pixels per inch. The display is bright and works well indoors and outdoors. The screen is vivid and saturated with some great contrast. It also has great viewing angles. The bezels are thin at just 1.7mm thick, and that gives the display an almost edge-to-edge feel. You can change the color temperature of the display in the setting menu to a little warmer or a little colder depending on your tastes, but for me the default settings were just perfect. Overall, the P9 has a great display and it will give you a good experience regardless of whatever you're doing on the screen, and those thin bezels really help the display to stand out. The P9 uses the HiSilicon Kirin 955 SoC, which is built on a 16nm FinFET process. Now, basically the 955 is a boosted version of the Kirin 950, and you get 4 Cortex-A72 cores and 4 Cortex-A53 cores. Accompanying the CPU is the Mali T880 GPU from ARM, and this particular model has 4 processing cores. Now, this basically means that the Kirin 955 is the most powerful processor that Huawei have ever built. In terms of day-to-day performance, the P9 is an absolute dream. It's fast, it's fluid, the animations are smooth, and the multitasking is a breeze. Now, the Mali T880 is a top-range GPU from ARM, and although this isn't the fastest GPU on the market, the 3D gaming experience will be perfect for the majority of users. Now, the octa-core arrangement with those 4 Cortex-A72 cores and the 4 Cortex-A53 cores really shine when it comes to the benchmarks. Let's look at some actual numbers. The Huawei P9 scored 1,751 on Geekbench's single core test and 6,583 for its multi-core test. Now, for some context, those scores are better than phones that have the Snapdragon 810 and better than phones that have the Exynos 7420. For Antutu, the P9 scored 96,703, which again ranks it faster than the Samsung Galaxy Note 5, faster than the Mate 8, as you would expect, and faster than the Galaxy S6. For Epic Citadel, this device manages a sweet 59 frames per second in ultra high quality mode, and you really can't ask for any more than that. The fingerprint reader on the P9 is very good. To be honest, I've come to expect nothing less from Huawei. The fingerprint reader on the Mate 8 was excellent, and the P9 follows suit. Since the fingerprint reader is on the back, you can wake and unlock your phone just by putting your finger on the reader. You can also use the fingerprint reader to trigger the shutter while taking photographs, as well as swipe left to right when viewing photos in the gallery. You can even use it to answer an incoming call. The Huawei P9 features a single speaker on the bottom edge next to the Type-C USB port. The speaker is quite loud and the sound is reasonable considering it isn't a front-facing speaker. However, as with many smartphones, music can sound a bit thin with a lack of bass. I found that at full volume some tracks tended to distort, and the sound quality improved actually when the volume was turned down a notch or two. The P9 has a 3000 mAh battery, which is a great plus point when you consider how sleek this device is. I did some battery tests and this is what I found out. First of all, I ran Epic Citadel to test the battery life while playing 3D games. According to my calculations, we'll be able to play 3D games for around 3.5 hours on a full charge. As for simpler tasks like browsing the web, you'll be able to do that for at least 7 hours on a full charge, or alternatively you could watch YouTube videos streamed over Wi-Fi for 8 hours. Overall, you're going to be able to get through a full day with this battery without any problems whatsoever. During my testing over a 24-hour period, I got a screen on time of 4.5 hours, and during that time I was surfing the web, watching YouTube videos and playing 3D games. If you need some more battery statistics and a look at how fast this phone charges, then please head over to AndroidAuthority.com to find the written companion that goes with this video. The Huawei P9 comes with Android 6.0 Marshmallow, but it has the Emotion UI layered on top. That means you're not going to get a stock Android experience, and for some people that could be a problem. For those of you unfamiliar with Emotion UI, the look and feel is quite different to stock Android. You get colourful square icons, desktop folders and a very much redesigned settings page. Of course, there is no app drawer as well. But besides the UI changes, there are lots of additional features that you don't get with stock Android, including motion gestures, a floating dock, voice wake up and a one-handed mode. Under motion gestures, you're able to enable motions like flip to mute, raise to ear to answer, and a tilt motion for moving icons and widgets. There's also the knuckle gestures that allow you to take a screenshot by double tapping on the screen with your knuckle or drawing a letter to open an app. Now, both types of knuckle gestures can be disabled if you find they misfire. With the built-in voice wake up, you can talk to your phone when it's nearby, but you aren't actually holding it. Its usage is limited to locating your device or placing a call, but it does actually work quite well. The default phrase is "OK Emmy," but you can change that to anything you like. A similar feature is quick calling, which allows you to initiate calls when the screen is turned off. However, you need to press and hold the volume button down until you hear a tone, and then you can speak the name of your contact. Since the Huawei P9 uses on-screen navigation keys, Huawei have given you the option to configure how you like them. By default, the back button is on the left and the recent apps is on the right, however that can be switched around. There's also the option to add a fourth button, which is the same as pulling down the notification shade. You just press the button and down comes the shade. There is also a theme engine that lets you easily change the look and feel of the UI to something that better suits your tastes. The theme store has 100 or so free themes arranged in several different categories, including cool, lovely, creative, cartoon and sophisticated. Switching to a new theme is straightforward, you just need to download it and apply it. However, you will need to register for a free Huawei ID. Huawei has also included a battery monitor, which gives you a high level of control over the battery-related features. For example, you can set a power plan, which allows you to tweak the CPU according to your usage, and so save battery when possible. One interesting feature that I haven't seen before is the ability to change the screen resolution from Full HD to 720p. According to the Battery Manager app, this will help you save power. Other battery-related options include a whitelist function to ensure that certain apps keep running after the screen is turned off, and a power usage firewall, which warns you about power-hungry apps. There's also an ultra power saving mode, which will disable everything except for calls and messages. It also brings up a simplified monochrome interface. When running low on battery, this can add several hours more usage. When it comes to the camera, of course, the big thing here is the partnership with Leica. Now, the P9 comes with 2 camera modules on the back, and there are 2 sensors. Now, they're 12 megapixel sensors. Now, one is a color sensor and the other is a black and white sensor that's meant to capture more detail. Now, the idea behind the dual sensors is all about light sensitivity, and the promise is that the monochrome sensor can give you a 200% more sensitivity than a regular sensor. There are also 3 different focus modes on board: laser focus, depth focus and contrast focus, as well as a dedicated depth measurement chip. This means that both lenses can focus individually, and the P9's improved ISP will automatically choose the best results. Unfortunately, neither lens has optical image stabilization, something that really should have been included, especially since this is a handset that promises to revolutionize smartphone photography. When it comes to the camera app, there are lots of things to see here. Other than the normal modes like HDR and panorama, there are lots of camera modes available, including a full manual mode and a special shallow depth of field mode. When using the shallow depth of field mode, you get the added ability of being able to refocus pictures post-capture. From the gallery, you can enter the refocusing mode and change which object is in focus along with the depth of field. Other modes include nighttime mode, time-lapse, slow-mo and watermark. There's also a series of live filters available if you want to get a little fancy when taking your pictures. Huawei has also added a light painting mode that lets you capture tail lights from moving cars or stars in the sky. Now, these effects can be really cool, but they really do require a very steady hand, or even better, a tripod, to make the shots come out the way you want. When in Pro mode, you also get some extra options on the setting page, namely the ability to save images in both RAW and JPEG formats, plus the option to enable or disable the AF auxiliary light feature. Now, if you're unsure what an AF auxiliary light feature is, it basically means that the LED from the flash will be shone while the camera is autofocusing in low light conditions. The 8 megapixel front-facing camera should give you good results, and it should certainly be good enough for selfie junkies. You'll find that the standard beautification mode is available, plus the perfect selfie mode as seen on the Huawei P8. And there you have it, the Huawei P9. Now, this is available in a few different models. There's one with 3 GB of RAM and 32 GB of internal storage, and that starts at €599. There's also a model with 4 GB of RAM and 64 GB of storage, and that starts at €649. I found my time with the Huawei P9 to be a great pleasure. You've got that great unibody construction, you've got that fast fingerprint reader, you've got the Kirin 955 processor, you've got a lovely 5.2-inch Full HD display, and you've got 3 gigs of RAM or 4 gigs of RAM depending on which model you get. It's a neat package. Now, the one thing that some people stumble over is the inclusion of the Emotion UI rather than stock Android. Personally, I don't mind. I actually quite like it, but you may feel differently. Well, my name is Gary Sim from Android Authority, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up. Also, don't forget to subscribe to Android Authority's YouTube channel. Please use the comments below to tell me what you think about Huawei's phones. Did you have a P8? Do you have a Mate 8? Did you buy a Nexus 6P? What are your feelings about the Huawei P9? Also, don't forget to download Android Authority's app. It's a great way of getting access to our latest news and features and reviews. But of course, most importantly, don't forget to stay tuned to AndroidAuthority.com, because we are your source for all things Android.